right, all right. Took me all month to get on. This is Namo Kofi Joe. This is the roof is on fire. We don't need no water. Let that mother burn. Yeah, this is coming to you live and direct, trying to get it in before African Awareness Month is over. Some of y'all call it Black History Month, but I'm moving a little quicker. I'm moving a little faster. We got to get out of this. We got to move. So yes, this is go to africaonthemove.com. See all the latest. Follow me on all my socials on Awakening Kinship. That's Awakening Kinship on all my socials. We gonna get into this today. You can see some new work. I'm been putting together some things. But on today, February 28th, 2026, I'm trying to make sure that I meet my consistency level by doing this every month. I was really struggling this month, maybe because it was a short month. A lot of things happening, a lot of things ending, a lot of things beginning. Uh, so let's get into it. We're going to talk about some geopolitical stuff that's going on in the world. We're also going to give you a little drawing, a little painting lesson today. And we're also going to relate that to our material conditions in reality. So yeah, where do I begin? Yeah, February has been a very eventful month. I've been trying to get a lot of things together, moving forward for next year. The 2027 been back, been beyond is something that I'm working on. As you can see in the background, there's a few paintings that I've already completed and working on some more. Yeah, I really wanted to make sure I got this in this month. And it's been a struggle. Not Well, there's been some things that I just had to do. The weather, from one, has been causing some issues. Uh, Getting motivated has been causing some issues. What's going on in the world, which I try not to specifically focus on one thing. I try to keep it kind of global in a sense, because a lot of times when I was growing up, I learned a lot about things that were happening around me, but not how that was connected to the things in the world, how things in the world were interconnected with the things going on around me. Like there are some people who, control, defy nature that much that they can, manipulate the things that are happening around you to the point where you think that all you need to focus on is the things that are around you, not knowing that these people are also, have their hands, in the cookie jar all around the world. They're like an octopus. And, you are just on one tentacle of what they're doing and not taking a look at, all the other tentacles. And we have uh, misled people by doing that. We have, confused people by doing that. We've tricked people by doing that. And so it's kind of hard for me to focus on just one thing without bringing up something else that's connected to it. And I try not to uh, follow, the news medias as much because they're also kind of misdirection, a lot of misdirection. They're telling you one thing and, uh, protecting another. And we if you don't know, now that you're we're fed a lot of half truths. Yes, there was something true about what they said, but they don't tell you the other side of the point that may be just as true and just as relevant and just as important. Uh, Take, for example, this, bombing of Iran today. Um, we're having a barrage of information about it now. But they planned this, okay? So we haven't heard anything about what was the plans, why are they planning it? We just hear that they started their plans. Their plans are in operation. And, you know, like you and like me, we all have plans. We all decide on what we're going to do today and how we're going to do it, and whether it's going to benefit just myself or it's going to benefit, a larger group. And clearly, the intentions behind today's actions um, were fed, uh, a lot of confusion. Like, why would a country that has, for one, negotiated with this country to, not have armaments, not have, nuclear weapons, um, but yet and still, a new regime comes in and decides that, well, we can't negotiate anymore. We have to just bomb. What kind of stockpile was built up, a surplus that was built up that gave need for the use of the amount of uh, bombardment that I haven't even watched any of it. I kind of feel like I don't need to watch any of it. It's the same kind of old story that we've always been fed, and it was been building. It's been building for quite a while. We've been fed this story for quite a while, and it didn't need for me to know when it was going to happen. I didn't actually know when, but I knew it was going to happen, and I knew that eventually that it was going to go down. And we so I'm almost looking at it from a point of view is that uh, when are the masses of the people going to have any real control over what the leaders decide to do in this country? The ones that they voted for, the ones that they picked, and yet and still have no recourse on their actions. I know there's a major protest today around the country about the actions that went on today. Uh, how long they'll last, I'm not sure, but I also feel like until we can rein in uh, this, chaos that has gone on for quite a while, not, for years in this country. We need to be out in them streets. We need to be protesting um, and making sure that this country hears the people. And stop just voting people in that decide on they're going to speak for the people, but after you vote for them, they decide to listen to you know who's ever funding them or whoever corporate class of people that they support. So I'm trying to spend some time figuring out how we can get a mass movement that can demonstrate to the people, of the world that we want change. Um, do we have to just shut this thing down to bring about this kind of change? If necessary, we must, because we are not in control. We are not the ones deciding on genocide. We're not deciding on uh, uh, who's going to remain in poverty. We're not going to decide on you know how the who gets locked up, who gets imprisoned. We have given up that. We've kind of turned that over to a group of people who are racist, uh, who are capitalistic, and really are consolidating power or resources, energy, economics to a class of people that eventually will be able to, operate outside of the realm of a vote or a realm of what the people might think or say. Um, and that's the kind of the long and the short of it. We what we're voting on, or I shouldn't say we because I don't vote, but what the people that vote on actually does not control what happens. We almost like vote to let go of the control and we turn that control over to people who we hope, I guess, have our best interest in mind. And it doesn't work out that way. Um, uh, the way the system is designed, which has been designed, now for over 250 years, uh, has never worked for the people. It's always worked for the corporate class. And but we're fooled into believing that these people that we elect, uh, I keep saying we, the people that are elected are working in our best interest, but they're a misrepresentation of our interests at the least, and at the most, they are basically criminals working for criminals, and uh, you do criminal things. Um, we should not have a government that not provides for the least of people, for the most stricken, the most poverty stricken people. We should not have a country that locks people up. You know, we should not have a country that goes around committing murder, and genocide as a belief in, keeping somebody safe, which they do with locking people up, what they do with keeping people in poverty. You know, there's just something fundamentally wrong with the system that has perpetuated this for 250 years. Um, there's no redress for what has happened to the indigenous people that this land was stolen from. There's no redress for the people that were enslaved, were stolen from Africa and brought here to do work that was never rewarded, or never reparations were never given, or reparations is still something that they have to decide on. It's just madness. To think that you know the education that we get in this country is meant to educate us. Because if we were getting real education, it would be about how do we change the system? How do we change it to work for the benefit of all people? There should be nobody suffering in this country. There should be nobody suffering in the world. And yet, and still, we have created, a system that perpetuates the same thing that perpetuated from the genocide that this country began in, and the enslavement that this country began in. They might have, changed the label. The label might look different, but the ingredients, they're still the same. There's still genocide, there's still enslavement, there's still murder, rape, theft that goes on. And it just has a different label, you know. And as a majority of people, the masses of people, as long as we're fed, uh, fast food, uh, entertainment, you know, um, something to distract us, we're okay with it. We're okay with allowing people that we think are working in our best interest. And the sad truth is that the people that are working in this country, their their rights are slowly and slowly eroding. Look at the situation that we're in. If you're not able to afford a house now, you probably will never be able to afford a house with the way income is coming. If you uh, want to provide for a family, you know, uh, that is getting increasingly more and more difficult. Um, if you just want your children to grow up in a safe, you know, loving environment, you know, that's increasingly becoming harder and harder. We are creating a society of people who will basically be poor and getting poorer. And more people are filling those ranks. Some of the people thought that they were going to never fill those ranks, but they are now among the people that they put they frowned on, or they put them they turned their nose to, or they tried to avoid, instead of trying to say, "That's me," walk in there, and unless I do something about it, you know, um, it'll be somebody else looking at me like I'm looking at them. And we have gotten to a point now where uh, the billionaire class, the millionaire class of people, which is a very small percentage in the world, have decided that the masses of the people don't deserve uh, to be on an equal playing field, on equal rights, or and as long as they keep voting us in, as long as they keep, supporting what we say to them, we're just going to continue to keep doing what we're doing, and which is a mass deep fake. To be honest, we are just getting more and more faked out. When you're on the basketball court, or when you see somebody on the basketball court, and you notice that they're going left, and then all of a sudden they go right. you know, well, that's a fake. You just got faked, right? Well, that's kind of like what's happening to us as a people. We got people that that appear to be on the left, and then right when they need to make that switch, they switch, to right, or they're on the right, and they switch to the left, and what happened to that person that just got faked out? They just standing still. They just standing there. You know, they don't know what to do. The person went straight to the hoop. He made a point, and then you have to figure out, how you gonna recover. What's gonna be the next move you gonna do? Are you gonna let that happen to you again, or are you going to, you know, see it coming the next time? Are you gonna be able to, avoid getting faked out? And so I'm at a point now where I see them, trying to fake me out. They go to the left. I'm looking still. No, I ain't got it. They go to the right. Nah. So they standing there. They the ones standing there looking at me which way to go. And I'm trying to tell y'all that, we got to hold these people up. We just got to hold them up. No, no, I'm not going for that. I'm not going for that. Uh, Matter of fact, I'm not going for you. You need to get out the way. And so a lot of us really have to start focusing in on that, you know, uh, to change, our outlook, change the way, we have to almost die with the ideas that we've had, thought were, collective, and have them reborn with a new idea of what is a collective, you know, and that's a hard thing to do because, you know, to die for some things that you believed in for all your life, first you have to come to the point of realizing that is it worth dying for? Are those ideas I'm not going to keep because, you know, they are providing me some type of comfort. They are providing me some type of, semblance of normalcy, but they're also, are not in line with the masses of the people. And if we can't let those ideas go, if we can't die to those ideas, there's nothing that can ever be reborn. You'll constantly caught up in a cycle of thinking that that what's going to happen is going to change, and nothing really ever does. Matter of fact, it just keeps getting worse because You haven't the ideas that you created to bring about that change. You haven't let those go. You haven't let those die. And move on to something that can be reborn in you because we all have it. We all have that ability. You know, not just Jesus. Okay, you, a lot of us only believe Jesus is coming back. But we can come back as something else. And we can be doing it without it having being nailed to a cross and physically dying, mentally dying. Biologically dying. We can actually psychologically die with our ideas and have a psychological rebirth. And that's not nothing you can believe in. So like today, I wanted to talk a little bit about that when I get to my artwork because I came across this word. I think it's been somewhat new to me, even though the word might have been new, but the expression has always been there. But Umoja, and my name Namo, right? And so I'm going to talk about that because it's really something that's been leading me in the direction that I've been going in my work and my craft and my ideas and my ideology, um, and it's really important. So let's kind of like segue into that. I'm trying to think if I should mention anything else about what's going on in the world today, without being specific, but just being more general, um, because um, the specifics are going to change. They're always going to change. The the general idea that capitalism is anti-black will never change. It's general. It's talking about a whole lot of things, but that's not going to change. Capitalism is anti-black. You know, it could be anti a whole lot of other things, but I like to focus on it being anti-black because that is where uh, you know the inception of capitalism comes in for me. It started that way for me. You know, it was bent on a reality that was telling us as a people that this is what we deserved. This is how we should live, and it hasn't changed. And we even have our own people, African people, who believe in capitalism. Think that, and to be honest, that's the most uh, mind-boggling phenomena that I think I've ever witnessed. Is that your oppression and exploitation that brought you here is somehow another, somehow your savior is somehow something that is going to make life better for you. Now I know that we've been traumatized. I know we've been terrorized, and that's nothing to dismiss. That's real. But the mentality, the psychological, uh, warfare that we go through, um, doesn't always tell us that. Doesn't always tell us that what we're facing or what we're going through has been because of our trauma. Has been because of terrorism. Um, and I don't even know if we think that deeply about it because I think that when I bring up this word pneumonia, if you notice the little picture that I have on my on this this podcast, webcast, or whatever you want to call it, this it talks about the idea of breath, air, uh, an all-seeing life force, um, spirit, soul, you know, wind. Not to mention wind, but the essence of who we are as a people was ancient. It was before the ideas of man, if you can think about that in that way. Uh, we were connected, or we are still connected, and will always be connected to the universe. The universe is where we began, which we all have understood. This earth uh, was part of a universal creation. But once the world was created, man started writing stories. Man started deciding how and when and where this earth was built. So, in some ways, man has started, you know, long ago to defy nature. If we are attuned with nature, we go along with the idea of we're just a part of nature. We're just a part of life. We're just part of we feel the wind, we breathe the air. We are spiritually connected to the planet. Our souls are linked to each other. That is the essence of life, the life force. There's no need for us to look at ourselves from any other point of view. Namo. Namo, I heard somebody tell me last week that they said the God of water. Well, there's a lot of people who do believe that Namo was something that was poured. It was water, and but it wasn't a God. The everything being associated with a God is somewhat uh, part of the dilemma. The idea that we need a God or God exists is antithetical or anti-African, to be honest, and I mean, African people, when what I've learned is that African people, the name of the people, what how they identify was through the people and their God. But I also have to look at that as being an interpretation of what they did. But that interpretation was that you had a people, who were named, you know, some African name, given a name, and they were, somebody were this was how they were interpreted. And so the name of the people was part of their name, and then their God was a part of their name. So there were these people that had these sort of, uh, two names. There was the name of their God and the name of their people, which is still an interpretation. But even if that is the case, then their whole connection of being as a human being, like their Ubuntu, was I am because we are. So there's that I am, which is the life force, and because we are is that connection we have with the people. With you don't make yourself an individual. You make yourself part of a collective, and that collective is connected to a community. That community is connected to a certain soil, certain land, and that land is connected to a planet, to a earth. And there's no you know there's no you know room for anything else. There's no need for somebody to intercede. There's no need for uh, a you know deity. Now we are also talking about the description of things that go on around us that have to be determined. Like the ankh. The ankh symbolizes life. You know, we do need uh, symbols. We do need some type of character, you know, to formulate ideas amongst ourselves as a group that we can all agree on, that we can all come to terms with. But uh, there's no need to force those ideas. There's no need to uh, condemn somebody. There's no need to guilt somebody into those ideas, which has been part of the trajectory of Abrahamic religions, or any other religion that places man, you know, as being, what is supernatural, you know, beyond, understanding, somebody that is, mystical, But let's get into this work. So, you notice this piece in the back. Let me bring it a little closer. Okay, that's still not the whole thing. There we go. That's a little better. Okay. So you see this piece here? Um, as an artist or somebody who creates, I think I got this idea from just a talk with how life began, how life has continued, how life, you know, basically has, you know, will be, what will be, And so there's a earth. It hasn't really kind of maybe come to fully in clarity, but the earth is this mother. Out of that earth, there's this structure, this tree, right? In the trunk of the tree, you see like this man's face, right? And you see, I did a little AI version. I took my ideas and put it in AI, and it popped out this picture. Even though I had drawn the picture already, I just kind of wanted to see what AI thought about it, which helps. It creates a model. And but then in the foreground, you see there's this woman who is in the future, and then there's a woman in the present, and then there's a woman in the past. And that's basically what it's called, um, uh, past, present, and future. And what I was trying to, which I hopefully it will, materialize, but what I'm trying to show, in the picture is that we are all, centrally connected to the earth, that every man is connected not only to his mother, but to the uh, the women that have kind of connected himself to life. Whether they be in his past, whether it be in the present, or whether it be in the future, and that he is a I don't want to say intersection, but he is somewhat of a vessel, a a conduit uh, to something that is much greater than him, right? Uh, if he sees it that way, if he looks at himself that way, for a lot of us, instead of us seeing ourselves as being connected, we look at ourselves as being the head. We're we are not that. We're not a piece. We're the head. And this picture is trying to show a little different sense of that. Is that there is a head, but that head is not, above or below. That head is central. that is part of the creation story of the world, And like I said, I'm pretty far, not anywhere near finishing this piece. So, but it is in line with some of the way I think, and hopefully I'll be able to pull it off. Be able to bring out, the depth of the thought, with the painting. But the women in this picture, or the mothers in this picture, um, are really representative of the branches that extend life, the protection that extended the life, the ancestral, roots that extend life, and that we should be holding that up, as men. We should be holding all of that up, and the foundation of which it came from, our mother, not only our biological mother, but our psychological mother, our physical mother, you know, um, being the planet Earth that we live on. You know, we shouldn't defy nature. You know, this is actually showing being in tune with nature, not defying it. Like placing ourselves outside of, the realm of, you know, who we are as a people. So, you see that there's going to be like a sun kind of background, the yellow is a representation of, the power of the sun. I don't really think I'm going to follow totally this picture. There are some things that the AI added that, maybe makes sense to it for an AI picture, but it didn't really make sense for what I was thinking. And so you have to be careful with AI doing your thinking. It can help you, kind of model things, but it can't be the thing. It doesn't think. It thinks what you think you're thinking. You know, and and then you have to figure out if that's, did it get it right? Did it? And I'm sure that there's some, programs that are getting it right precisely, particularly on how prompt the AI, or what you want AI to predict, which is something that we need to be very clear on and very conscious of, because who is the one programming, these AI models is very important. Like, I'm just, a creator that basically is doing this in my house. But can you imagine someone who has the capability of programming um, a supercomputer uh, to do what it thinks is logical, or what is correct? The computer is not going to tell you whether it's logical. The computer is going to tell you what logic it found in what you said. Okay. Meaning that it could be anything that you can think of. And some of it could be very detrimental. The computer does not, I think it could be, but not now, have any moral compass. It's a machine. It's being programmed. The moral compass has to come from the programmer. The programmer has to decide how this model is being used. And that may not really make a lot of sense. And I'm not trying to say I understand all of it totally anyway, but I just feel like we need to be careful on who's running things. And a lot of times we're not. We just let anybody, who got money and the resources, who we don't know nothing about their childhood. We don't know nothing about how they think of the world, but yet and still they're now in control of these massive data centers. So just a little food for thought, something to think about. Let's get into this other piece. Let me see how I'm gonna do this. Can you see that? Yeah, I think that's pretty good. Yeah, that's pretty good. So you see that piece here? This one is called Black Owned. Black Owned. Okay. I read this book about bookstores called Black Owned Bookstores or something like that. It was a very good book. I mean, I recommend it. Look it up. Um, but it's written from somebody that I know I've actually met. And when I get a chance to see her again, I want to make sure that I tell her about what I'm doing, why I did this piece, um, how important it is to me. But I don't know if you can see this as clearly as I can, but I um, took a fist, like a Black Power fist. And I don't know if I even got that right here. Maybe like that, okay? A Black Power fist, okay? And then I made uh, the hands or the fingers and the whole hand of books. And when you think about Black Power, you know, um, you know, how do you get it? You know, uh, you got to read. As much as as I believe in, I don't really believe in it. How much I know that there's a life force, that there's a spirit, there's a soul that guides us, that is in us, that is air, the wind, the the all-seeing eye. I have to find some way of proving that. There was somebody that told me this a long time ago. I mean, I must have been about 21 or something, but they said, if you don't believe me, do your research, uh, prove that I'm wrong. Go read a book, read something that proves what I said is not correct. And I always remembered that. I always held on to that because I felt that person was right. Not to say that we shared the different points of view. Matter of fact, that same person said that they never really had to argue with me on the point in the first place. But I just respected their point of view on that because so many of us, without any other real knowledge, will just accept things, you know, and we haven't documented it, we haven't done any research on it, you know. And but this is basically going to be a picture of uh, some books that are somewhat of a statue or a actual bookstore, an actual resource that there's going to be people like walking to it, walking into it. Um, and the books are going to have certain titles that are going to be very specific, like the main, book on the base here is going to be liberation. The book that's holding everything up is going to say think Africa. So it's going to be like think Africa liberation. Okay. And then the book that is open, um, it's not going to say read, uh, uh, you know, um, but it could, I mean, there was I don't have the actual drawings in it, but the blue book is going to say worldview. The green book is going to say Ubuntu. The book next to it is going to say Pan Africanism. The book on the corner there is going to say life. The book kind of at an angle is going to say scientific socialism. The book next to it is going to say Black is beautiful. And then that book on the far end is going to say revolution. And, I made the books intentional, not that they're actual real books, but definitely the books that you should be reading have to be about that. Okay, it should have something to do with that. And not to say that there's a specific book that I could have done that. I could have put, you know, real books that I've read that kind of direct you toward, this type of thing. And that's not such a bad idea, you know, maybe if somebody, excuse me, if somebody looks at this and decides that, they know what books are the most important